Welcome back. Thank you for remaining with us. You're still watching Financial Markets. And now, when we went into the break, we are going to look into the performance of several stocks here. And right now, let's move to Centum. Centum came out yesterday as a top gainer. If you can see this screen here, you can see the performance of Centum Investments Company. It is a company that is cross-listed from Nairobi Securities Exchange. And just as yesterday's markets, we see that it went up by 2.04 Ugandan shillings, and that was a 0.64% rise. And we can see that the pricing came to 319.92 just over the 12 hours ago, as you can see. And so we can also look into this stock for the last 10 months to just monitor how it has been moving. And if you can see, we can see an average downward decline. We can see a decline from the month of September here, where we had prices as high as 550 and as high as 500 on average. And right now we are talking about prices of 319 and below, which is a very significant decline of over 190 Ugandan shillings since last year. And these declines happened in steps. For example, in November 2021, we saw the first decline there. You can see that decline down to over 400. It didn't happen at once. And then we see that the prices were pretty much straight up here at 400, and nothing really changed since the period November 2021 till January 2022, when we're coming into the new year. And we can see that the prices remain stable for the month of January, for the month of February, and the month of March, all around the 400 mark there. And then we see that in March, we see that another decline happened from 400 shillings downwards to about 390, 380, and that was during the month of May. Now, starting in the middle of the month of May down to June, you can see still there was another significant decline there from the 350, 330 downwards to below 300 to over 290 Ugandan shillings in the month of June. Now, this month also saw, as the month of June ended, we are ushering into July. We see slight increases. We can see increases from 219, 290 to over 300 averages, which we are seeing even now in this trend of coming to 319.92 Ugandan shillings at a 2.04 shillings rise and 0.64% daily rise. Now, this performance just indicates how the stock here in Uganda, when it comes to some of these markets that are situated in Nairobi, we see that because people don't maybe know some of these companies, maybe people are worried they will not be able to find buyers of stock. We don't see that much activity or trading on some of these stocks, and we want to change that because these stocks are traded here in Uganda and they have a very large market capitalization. Stocks like KCB and Equity, which are actually the very top companies when it comes to market capitalization. So we would want to see some of these stocks start to trade more and more. Maybe that will also drive the prices in that positive direction. But still looking into the performance of these stocks on average, for example, the Centum company stock, Centum got listed in the year 2011, matter of fact, on the 10th of February, and since then it has been listed on the Uganda Securities Exchange. It trades under the ticker symbol CENT. As you can see, it is CENT, and the International Securities Identification Number of USE CENT is KE000265. Now, Centum Investment Company is currently the 15th most valuable stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange with a market capitalization of 213 billion Ugandan shillings, which makes about 1% of the Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, when you talk about value, we are still talking about the size of the company on the exchange based on how much or what the worth of their shares are on the stock exchange. And currently, we have 213 billion worth of stock on this Kenyan company called Centum Investment Company. Now, looking into their performance on the market, if you can look at these figures here on this board, you can see that in 2019, you can see they traded a volume of, you can see that on the 19th, of July, that was yesterday, they traded a total volume of 100,000. That is the number of shares they traded, and the closing price was 317.88, and that was after a gain also, which saw a gain of 30.7 shillings and the change of 10.7%. On the 20th of June, they traded 200 shares, ending the day with a closing price of 287.15, and there was a change of a decline. There was a decline which was about 88.92 Ugandan shillings, and that indicated a 23.64% decline. Then on the 7th of March, of April, 2022, still we see 2,700 shares that were traded at ending the day with a price of 376.07 and a change of 64.2, and also seeing that that was also a decline. Then on the 3rd of March 2022, we see 211 shares that traded on this particular stock, closing with the price of 440.27, and this was after a decline of 104.46, a 22.04% decline based on that particular day. On the 1st of December 2020, we see 200 shares that were traded, and that was you can see 1,096. Actually, you can see over 564. So these were quite high prices. If you can see the years 2022, 2020, 2019, you can see that this stock has really declined in pricing. You can see that from this 1,086 on the 5th of December 2019 to right now 317 on the 19th of July, you can see a very significant decline from the 1,000 to 300, over 700 shillings lost in value over the last 2 years. That is looking back from all that time. And in terms of trading, you can see that the highest volume we have seen is actually this 100,000, which we saw yesterday, that one, that was on the 19th of July, 2022. 100,000 shares were traded, closing the day with a price of 317.88. Maybe these were actually bought because we see the price moved up at that particular percentage of 10.7%. So that is looking into briefly that history there. Remember, as a shareholder, these are figures you must look at. These are figures you must monitor. You must keep updated on the company's activity on the market. You must know if the company is selling, if the company is buying, if the company is gaining, if the company is losing. This is the best way to navigate the market if you are in the know. Now, Centum Investment, still talking about the closing trading day yesterday. They closed at a price of 317.88 on Tuesday. Now, not looking at yesterday, when we go back Tuesday, the day before yesterday, they closed at 317.88 Ugandan shillings per share on the USE, that is Uganda Security Exchange, recording a 10.7% increase in value. Now they ended, of course, the day with the day before, that was on Monday, at 287.15, and Centum began the year with the price of 444. That is, we are looking about the month of January. On the very first day of January, the opening price for Centum was 444. Now that's a very significant figure for you to track performance, because it gives us the year-to-date performance. Now, but since this 400 shillings mark, we see that the company has lost over 28.1% of its price valuation, and this has made it rank 15th on the year-to-date performance counter there. And the shareholders' fears may be allayed by the 10% increase in Centum share price since June 22nd, which is the third best on the Uganda Securities Exchange. So based on year-to-date performance, we see a decline of 28.1%, but based on the monthly performance, we see a 10% increase since June 22nd. Now, Centum on the Uganda Security Exchange is the 8th most traded stock. Looking at the 18 listings, it comes in position number 8 in terms of trading, and it has been so for the last 3 months, since April the 11th to July the 20th, 2022. Centum has traded a total volume since within this period of 3 months of 100,200 shares. As we can see on this, based on these trading results, the stock performance, we see that 100,000 on the 19th of July and the 200 shares on the 20th of June being sold. And so on average, we see 100,200 shillings being the shares that have been traded on this particular stock since April to right now. Those are 3 months back. Now, regarding the administration of this company, Centum Company was founded in 13th March 1967 excuse me, and operates in the financial services sector, the investment services industry, and of course it has competitors. Now on the market, we see that they have contracted over 1,082 employees, and the company is led by Mr. James Mwirigi Moria, who is 44 years old and acts as the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director since 2008. The company's board of directors is chaired by Dr. Donald Kaberuka, who is 70 years old, and the board is composed of 10 members who can, of course, be found on the company website. These are also important indicators of performance. If you think that a company has good leaders, then it means that company is worth investing in. If a company has bad leadership, if you think the company doesn't have enough of what it takes for leaders, then definitely don't invest in that company. In your own opinion, you shouldn't do that. Now, Centum Investments, since it is dealing in the investment services sector, we see that it has over about 7 competitors who are dealing in financial sector as well, including National Insurance Company, Jubilee Holdings, DFCU Bank. We're seeing also Bank of Baroda. We're seeing Equity Bank Limited and KCB Bank as well. That is the performance of this particular stock, that is Centum Investment Company, that came out as a top gainer yesterday. Let's look at another company here, Kenya Airways, which we haven't looked at in a while, I guess. Kenya Airways is a Kenyan aviation company, first incorporated in 1977 as a wholly owned entity by the government of Kenya, following the collapse of the East African Airways. If you remember those old good days when we had a common airline called the East African Airlines, Kenya came out of that airline to become an independent airline as the national carrier for the Kenyan nation there. The company was privatized first in 1995, And it came when the 26% of the shares of the company were actually sold to KLM, which is the Royal Dutch Airlines. That is the national airline for Netherlands. And then in 1996, involving an initial public offer of the company's shares in the biggest share offering in Kenya's history, which was oversubscribed by 82%. So in 1996, Kenya Airways went public for the first time on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and there was an overwhelming subscription for this particular stock on its IPO. Like I explained, the IPO, the very first time companies getting listed. So we see that there was an oversubscription of over 82% when this stock came on board. Now, Kenya Airways shares have attained blue chip status on the Nairobi Stock Exchange owing to, among other factors, a high level of corporate disclosure. There's also a high earnings growth, and the shares relatively high liquidity on the Kenyan market. Now, the decision to cross-list on the airline of the airline's shares onto the Uganda Securities Exchange was made as part of the company's strategy to be a major player in Africa. Now, Kenya Airways is listed on the Uganda Security Exchange since the 28th of March 2002. And the Kenya Airways trades under the ticker symbol KA. Very simple symbol, as you can see, KA. That's all you need to know. And then we see that the international securities identification number for the company is KE009081084. Kenya Airways is currently the 7th most valuable stock with the market capitalization of 699 billion, which is about 3.29% of the total market capitalization of the Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, looking into this performance here, we can see how the Kenyan stock has happened to play out for the last 10 months. That this actually is a very stable performance, as you can see here on the graph. You can see that since November 2021, we see almost a flat line, that there is no change really in pricing, but the pricing has been kept at 120, except for days like in January. You can see when we entered January, and then around the beginning of the month of February, we see a very sharp peak there, which is really just a daily maybe or a two-day performance indicator, that maybe the prices went as high as 140. And then we see also in May, after the month of May, in around June, mid-June, we see that the prices also went down significantly to below 100 for a single particular day, but later returned to 120. So generally speaking, it is a very, very stable market, as you can see. Now, looking into their last day trading results, we can see that the opening prices are still not significant because they did not change. We see that there was no volumes that were traded, and that there was no number of deals that was recorded. But we can see here the shares outstanding, and these shares outstanding stand for the number of shares that are listed on the main investment market segment of the Uganda Securities Exchange. They total up to 5.68 billion shares, and they are worth 699 billion in terms of the market capitalization. That is, if you multiply the 5.68 times the 123.02, which is the current market capitalization of the company there. Now, Kenya Airways, definitely we can see that the stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange have only one competitor. The competitors are dealing in the industrial services sector, and that is Uganda Cranes Limited, but nothing really like an airline or something that is listed on the Uganda Securities Exchange. We hope Uganda Airlines can bring in some competition probably for Kenya Airways by listing on the exchange. Probably we wait for that, as of course we see also the growth of our airline here in Uganda. But Kenya Airways, looking at its stock performance, quite stable. Liquid in Kenya, not so liquid here. We don't see much activity here, but we can see very much activity on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. If you can go check out this performance on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, you will see that Kenya actually Airways is a very, very, very active market, as you can see. Now let's look into the losing side. We came out with these are losers. These are not top gainers. These are losers, bottom losers. Like we see Nation Media Group, who came in at 578.16 after a drop of 4.85%. KCB came in at 1,244.65 after a loss of 3.78%, and Stanbic Bank Uganda at 20.2 after a loss of 1.46%, while Equity Bank also came in the second day as the loser for 1,413.28 Ugandan shillings. Now let's look into the stock of MTN, which is a company that also had some activity on the stock market yesterday. Now MTN Uganda came in one of the last positions, but not the very last, and we can see that we see the trading results there. We can see the traded volume of 1,238. We can see that the gross turnover there was 235,220 shillings, after of course trading those 1,200 stocks. But the shares outstanding right now are 22.4 billion shares, and the market capitalization of this particular stock is 4.26 trillion Ugandan shillings. MTN, to just talk about MTN, you know, it is one of the stocks that have been quite resilient since the listing of this particular stock in December 2021, which we also at least got chance to see for the very first time a telecommunications company in Uganda get listed on the exchange. It has the 4.25 trillion shillings market capitalization, which makes it the second most valuable stock after Equity Bank Limited, and actually one of the few local listed companies with such a market capitalization here in Uganda. Because looking in the top 10 most valuables, we don't see many Ugandan companies, but MTN has managed at least to keep up there, and we see that also based on their performance. Now MTN Uganda, we can say that last day it closed yesterday with a price of 189.77 after a daily loss of 0.1%, really a very small loss. And MTN began the year with a price of 194.99, but has since lost a 2.68% of its price valuation, ranking it the 6th on the Uganda Securities Exchange in terms of year-to-date performance. Shareholders' fears, however, may be allayed by the 5% increase in share price since 22nd of June, which is the 5th best on the market, and that is based on the 1 month performance. Uganda MTN is the 3rd most traded stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange, and it has, over the past 3 months, we have seen a traded volume of over 13.4 million shares, valued at 2.5 billion. So you can imagine a company that can actually trade over 2.5 billion Ugandan shillings in just 3 months on the stock markets. It is something really to appreciate about this particular stock in the MTN. And of course, we thank the former CEO, Mr. Wim van Helput, who is now going out. Of course, we are going to see probably starting in August the new CEO, Madame Sylvia, who is coming in from Safaricom to take over the CEO position of this particular company. But we can say this performance is quite remarkable, and MTN is a very promising stock. With an average of over 213,183 shares that are traded per session, we see MTN really doing very good in terms of volumes, and the volume high that has so far been achieved in the last 3 months is over 2.11 million shares that was achieved on the 12th of July for the very same period. and that is the MTN stock right there. Now, there are a couple of other losers, but because of time, we may not look into them. We saw Equity Bank yesterday come in as a gainer, but we see right now it's coming in as a loser, losing at this particular moment. But the shares outstanding for Equity, we can see at 3.7 billion, and also the market capitalization at 5.28 trillion, which makes Equity still the most valuable stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Thank you for remaining with us. We're going to take another very short break. When we return, we cross over to Nairobi and have a look at how the market did, and also look at other counters probably that did some work here on the market as we summarize the stock for you. Stay with us. We will be right back.